everybody. Welcome to the 10th episode of the Spot Burn Podcast. You got Dan, the owner of Musky Fool, and the one and only
Bam Bam.
We made it to 10 episodes, buddy.
We did it, Dano.
We did it. Big thank you to everybody that's kept pushing us along and has enjoyed it and tuned in thus far. I think we're having a good time. We're having fun with it.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
It's been a fun journey. Slightly less nerve-wracking than the first episode.
Slightly. It gets slightly less nerve-wracking each time, except this time, for those tuning in on video, we tried to up our video game a little bit, give you guys a better viewing experience. So on our end, that increased the nerves because we have no idea if this is going to work until we end the recording. So yeah, that's always fun to play with technology in real time. But anyway, today is going to be a fun one. We wanted to do a special episode for our 10th episode, and we hope it's fun and informative. We got a special guest here in the studio who's going to help us spot burn a topic near and dear, pun intended, to our hearts. Ooh. Today we're talking bucktail, all things deer ass, deer hair, and arguably one of the most important pieces in our pursuit of muskies on the fly. We are excited about it. Why do we love it? What are some of the secrets we have learned? Why no matter what, it will forever and always be a pillar in the pantheon of fly fishing for muskies. You have to stick with us to hear our thoughts and much more on that. I hope you guys enjoy this one. But first, sponsor plug. Giving a quick shout out to two sponsors. We've kept this list pretty short and sweet because we want it to be brands we actually use and trust. We've had thousands of energy drink companies, tobacco companies, luxury car companies, boat companies. They're all reaching out to us to sponsor the podcast, and we've turned them all down, believe it or not. Every single one of them. So let's give a shout out to two American-made companies. For anybody that doesn't understand the sarcasm either, we've had no one else reach out. No one's even paying attention or downloading. We're just down here in the basement recording jargon and nonsense. But there are two companies that have helped sponsor us. We use them. We love them. Stealthcraft Boats out of Baldwin, Michigan, and Cortland Line Company out of Cortland, New York. So give those two companies your love. Go check them out and tell them Musky Fool sent you. All right. Current events and happenings. Bam, I'm going to turn to you. And you got any updates from the guide front for us?
The guide front has been going very well, Dano. We had a very, what I would call, technical smallmouth season. They weren't exactly jumping in the boat. We learned a lot of new techniques and tricks along the way, and we ended on a really high note last weekend. I just wrapped up probably my last weekend of smallmouth guiding, and now we're transitioning into the musky world. So I'm very excited for the next couple months here.
No more 8 weights.
Yes, sir.
It's when the big ones come to play. How's your fall looking? I know you got a little availability left, perhaps, or you're calling it. You're booked up. Bam Bam needs some personal fishing time.
Yeah, August was nuts, but September is a little bit light. So if anybody out there is interested in getting in the boat, chasing some muskies, give us a shout. We'd love to take you guys out on an adventure for the day.
Shamu's growling in her cage. Let her out.
I miss her.
Let her rip. What else you got on current events for us, Joshua?
Real Recovery, folks. For those of you who aren't familiar, Real Recovery is a national nonprofit organization that conducts fly fishing retreats for men living with all forms of cancer. Their mission is to help men in the recovery process by sharing the healing powers through the sport of fly fishing while providing a safe and supportive environment to explore their personal experiences with cancer. So they're looking for participants. They can have a maximum of 12 folks. So if you or somebody you know is living with cancer, they may be eligible for the retreat. Everything's paid for. It's a really cool experience. A lot of great people out there. It's just a tremendous opportunity for everybody. That starts up in Eau Claire on Wednesday, September 6th and runs through the 8th. So yeah, check them out on the internet at realrecovery.org.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And if for some reason, if this comes out after that starts, I'm certain, or I would guess they're trying to do another one the year after. So if you didn't get in the mix this time around, go check that out for next year, because that's a really, really cool event for a good cause and a really cool spot in Wisconsin. Thank you, Josh. All right, main event time. Let's get after it and talk Bucktail. But first, who's this guy we got in the Spot Burn studio with us, the dungeon? We got Gabe Park, manager of Musky Fool Fly Shop. So if you're in the shop, you see him quite a bit. He also, for those that don't know, is kind of the head of all things material production at Musky Fool. Not kind of, he is. He's the head. He's the administrative assistant. He's the dyer. He is all things material production. If you have touched our bucktail, bought it, used it, it went through Gabe's laboratory. Yeah, a lot. Gabe's touched it a lot.
A few times.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the Spot Burn podcast, my friend.
Thanks,
we're glad to have you on.
Thanks, guys. Stoked to be here.
So a little bit of intro. We obviously know all your deep, dirty secrets. Yep. We're not going to air them all today, just a couple. But for those kind of tuning in, just give us where you're from. How did you get into musky? Yeah. How did you get into fly fishing? And then I think, why are you so obsessed with deer ass, bro?
So I born and raised in Wisconsin. Grew up in the Fox Valley, Neenah to be specific. Wasn't really like super diehard into fly fishing as a little one. I was kind of the weird guy who did a little bit of both. Went to college in Stevens Point, caught my first muskie on a fly rod. So probably 2011 or something like that. On a woolly bugger, fishing for bass.
Love it.
And that kind of like...
No bucktail in that.
Kind of got the gears turning a little bit. I eventually, after college, moved out to Colorado, followed my now wife, so she could continue school out there. At that point, I was no longer the weirdo with the fly rod. I was with good people that also wanted to fly fish. So once I moved out there, that's kind of when it really took off, enough so that I decided to try to get into the industry. Worked at a fly shop out there, St. Pete's in Fort Collins. Love those boys if you're listening. But yeah, worked out there for a long time, fell head over heels for trout and all that stuff. It's kind of funny though, because even when I lived out there, I knew I wasn't going to stay there. Like I knew deep down that we would be back in Wisconsin eventually. And that one muskie encounter kind of like it stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be back in the home state of Wisconsin. And I can't foresee myself continuing this trout thing a whole lot. I mean, I still fish for trout, but we just have so many more options out here. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was even as I was working at the fly shop out there, I was the weird guy tying with bucktail. I taught bucktail classes out there. I was teaching people how to tie deceivers, and I was the weirdo. Everyone was like, the guys I work for like barely
big flies.
Yeah, they're just
those
like,
aren't
you guys
flies.
Are weird. Yeah, you guys are weird. So yeah, now fast forward to now, move back to Wisconsin and work at Musky Fool.
Yeah, well, and like
muskies.
that was I think you started guiding when you got back, and we met. Man, that was 2021.
Yeah, that was pretty quick after.
Yeah, and I think just like it was a slow start, but I think pretty soon we both realized like this thing over here is growing. You'd even told me once, like you for business school, like wrote like you're like, I'm going to start a fly shop.
Yeah, exactly. I like even just a couple of years ago, I like started a little tech degree, and I was like trying to get a business plan together. Kind of a big dream at the time, but it was during COVID. I had nothing better to do, so I did online school, we kind of met each other, and
I don't even remember if we had we bought the building yet before you. I don't think so. No. I think because you were doing all sorts of stuff, and then it just like the building blew up, and you were like, "I'm gonna just come down there."
Yeah.
I don't trust you fools down there.
I specifically remember like shooting, and we still hadn't even met, but I specifically like remember shooting you like some notes, like, "Hey, you ever heard of AFTA?" And like just like these little things, and we would start conversations based on that, and then you and I fished together, and now I'm here in a podcast.
Now you're here in a podcast. Yeah. We'll get into a little bit more of that journey, how Mr. Gabe Park, Walter White of Musky Fool started dying tails. And then like, from my perspective, it's just like, not to gush over you, but we would not be where we are with go look at the reviews online. They're like all about Gabe in the shop, and it's been like the perfect amount of like you've seen enough of this in a different light out west and have this like deep love and appreciation for the Midwest, and like dude, it's been awesome. It's been awesome. We seriously wouldn't be able to do it without him. So if you want Musky Fool to keep doing its thing, make sure to give Gabe Park some love when you see him next in the shop.
I can say right now that if I were to have created my own fly shop, it would not have been anything like the Musky Fool you and Jen.
Well, we appreciate that. It's got your mark on it now, buddy. Talk to me about Bucktail. Why back even then was it kind of a twinkle in your eye?
Man, there's a few ways to go with this. I've always been obsessed with natural materials. Like, I think that's one of the original things that intrigued me about fly fishing. Like, was I remember like collecting feathers in the backyard when I was like 11 years old and like fastening them to a hook. It would never.
He's going to be a serial killer. He keeps bringing home dead animals.
Yeah, but like the natural material thing just really intrigued me. It was kind of like, you can get this thing from the earth. I don't have to, use like petroleum products. I mean, it just was cool. And bucktail is the only material that does what it does. There's nothing else like it. If you want to tie big flies and you don't use bucktail, I'm not really sure what you're using. I mean, so
enter the synthetic overlords, which like we'll talk about a little bit, but like to devil's advocate, you can use synthetics, but I guess like, and like I do a little bit, Josh, you do a little bit. I guess like why don't they work as well? What are the pluses and minuses?
Bucktail has a specific taper that you just cannot find in a synthetic material. It's thick at the base, it's hollow in the middle, and it gets finer towards the tips. And there's just something about that that moves, undulates, pulsates, and swims better than anything else. I also just think that it's hard to work with. There's a level of like skill that's required that intrigues me, and it's the same reason fly fishing intrigues me. There's more layers to it, and you have to work through those layers to get good at. And I find bucktail to fit that bill. It's a little bit more complicated to work with than synthetics, and once you kind of master that, it acts better than synthetics, in my opinion.
So you're a big fan of faux bucktail then too?
You're fired. Yeah, no, that I've honestly used that stuff twice, and this was even before I knew much, or I was considered myself, experienced with bucktail, and I could tell right off the bat it was garbage.
Yeah. And like I think worth noting, the three of us, and like jump in and speak for yourself too, Josh, but myself at least via my fishing and Musky Fool, by no means are we first, second, third, or fourth to purport the beauties of bucktail when it comes to big streamers. Like absolutely. In many ways, we're standing on several layers of shoulders of giants.
Totally.
Yeah. We got one of them right there. We're going to talk about another one of them. We'll get into a little bit of that, but like from Bob Popovic to Brad Bowen to all sorts of fly tires, bucktail has been around before the synthetics.
Yes, it's one of the original fly tie materials.
Yeah. What about and I know Josh, you have some pretty gnarly patterns that are synthetic based. You obviously tie a bunch with bucktail too, but why do you, just to like play the counterpoint out a little bit, what do you like about it compared to bucktail? Like what are some of the benefits, especially for someone who might be listening that has not really tied flies before?
I got you. Well, I think like coming from the design background, I felt like you can do some more creative, sculptural flies with synthetics and whatnot. They have those really long wispy hairs, so you can go absolutely nuts. But my dirty secret is I always incorporate bucktail in my synthetic flies, because one of the best attributes, like Gabe was saying earlier, you can't find in any other product, is they provide a really good like bulky underwing to support all of your synthetics. So when you got those two together, it's like a match made in heaven.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, the other perspective too, like comparing them, the beauty and the curse of bucktail is no one bucktail is the same.
Totally.
Synthetics pretty much come out of the package identical.
Yep.
So that's a benefit. But there's also something about just like the dynamics of our flies, whether it's a small deceiver to a giant musky fly. For those watching the video, it's just like the characteristics of how light it is, how much bulk it creates, and how much it sheds water is just like perfect menage a trois of things that we want.
Yeah, totally.
Like we've tried, I think a lot of others have tried to, and there's not to say there aren't synthetic brush flies and changers and all sorts of stuff that we fish as
and that
well.
Stuff all has its time and place, 100%.
We always come back to bucktail though.
Always.
Yeah. What do you think? And then I think, well, you talk about this too. That's like, and you mentioned it earlier, a little bit of like the meta reasons, which is just the beauty of where we are, what we're chasing it with. Like these two things coexist in the same.
Totally. I mean, there's like, I think there's a steep cultural tradition of deer hunting in the upper Midwest. I mean, I'm from Wisconsin, so I can speak for Wisconsin the most. And
the Orange Army.
I mean, yeah, like if you're from Wisconsin, you know exactly what I'm talking about. People take off weeks.
Schools get closed
for 10 days while rifle season's happening. There's a steep cultural tradition of bucktail. Same with musky fishing. There's, it's our state fish. There's this kind of mythology and just this, they're put on a pedestal here. And in our little world of fly fishing, those two get to collide. And I think that's pretty cool.
And even like broader than that is like really anywhere that there's native muskies, there are white-tailed deer.
Yeah.
And like where there aren't muskies, like temperature-wise, climate-wise,
Totally.
It's like they don't exist mutually exclusive in some way.
Totally. I mean,
how are they connected? Musky fly fishing. Clearly, this is the only way.
Yeah.
But.
And I mean, I've got a long way to go because I just recently started deer hunting, actually myself. But it's always been a dream of mine to shoot like an 8-point buck and catch a 40-inch muskie in the same day. On the same river.
Yeah, then it's possible.
It's entirely possible. In fact, like 2 or 3 years ago, a hunter and I had a chance at it. We just were musky fishing and didn't have a gun.
Yeah,
we weren't prepared.
Yeah.
So
now Gabe brings slugs in a 12 gauge every time he musky fishes. It's so annoying. You just never know when you're going to get shot at. Yeah, it's a good reminder to wear orange when you're musky fishing in November too. We like to stand out. What about like? And it's like tried to be replicated, but like what are some of we briefly talked about, what are some of the shortcomings? Like you work with a lot of bucktail. We've all tied with a lot of bucktail.
What are the shortcomings
of it?
Bucktail?
Yeah, like what it's not to like put it too high on this mighty horse, but like why? I know there's people out there. I've talked to Eli, I've talked to Matt Grajewski. I swear to God, Matt, if I can pronounce your name right one time in my life, I will win the lottery. I'm sorry, but we've talked about like, they're not. Well, they've found workarounds.
Yeah, I think the first thing that came to mind was like, especially from a production tying standpoint, it's like when you mentioned those guys, it's got to be really difficult to find the same color bucktail with the same properties and the same lengths year round. I mean, there's just so much there's so much variation that, I don't envy that. And I guess similar, you don't even need to be a production tire to find those same issues. I think, when you buy a bucktail, the same black bucktail, the same orange bucktail that you get one day, it's not going to be the same the next time. So that's the biggest one in my mind is you really want to be able to play with your materials or get them from a trusted source that grades them. So
underwear.
Yeah, right.
Well, and I think that speaks to a little bit about what we'll get into on like why Musky Fool, when we started fly tying materials, when we started selling fly tying materials, that came off like we started fly tying materials. Haha, we didn't. It was like, what's the world of buying bucktail look like?
Yep.
I mean, it's like, man, people collect their bucktail, good bucktail, even more than they collect the flies. Like, it's more of like, dude, I don't even want to tie with this one. And I look at this one that I got, and we've all like seen each other's basements where it's like, check out my bin.
You should see my bin.
Yeah, Gabe's got, I'm certain Gabe has the best bin because I get what he doesn't get. Like, he brings it to the shop and he's like, I brought some good stuff for you. And you're just like, what did you not bring? What did you keep?
Yeah.
The perks, baby.
It is the perks.
But as like the average, not even average, just as a consumer, you know, at least my thought process when we were like, we're going to do fly tying materials was like, are we just going to, not to throw anybody under the bus, but are we just going to be like every other fly shop where we just put the same tails on the wall and, you know, the shop folk pick the ones they want first and the crap kind of goes on the wall and you just, I mean, we all went there. We all had to go sit on our hands and knees, pull all the tails off the wall, pull them out of the package. Hey, do you have any more in the back?
Yep.
Can you, and it just, hunting and pecking, we tell people, I remember like, oh, I found this one guy. You're just always searching because it wasn't available. Quality varied, size varied, color varied. Yep. No one like seemed to put it on this pedestal, which honestly is odd because like we do this with hackle. We in some degree we're genetically breeding birds for its specific hackle, but we're grading it and we're separating it and it helps the consumer find what they're looking for.
And I think a lot of that just has to come down to like the nature of how many people are trout fishing. And especially 5 years ago.
True.
And yeah, I mean, even us musky guys, we're kind of, I mean, there's a lot of us, we're growing, but we're still spread out, you know, they're like fly shops probably don't see the demand to like take it as seriously as we do.
Yep. And worth noting, I think we obviously take a musky lens to this, but Bucktail's properties, like if you're tying streamers over 4, 5, 6 inches, it starts to become you kind of, it all gravitates towards like Bucktail is a good material for that.
Absolutely.
Whether it's Arapaima or sharks or striped bird.
I feel like us musky guys and us striped bass have to stick together. Yeah, we have the same appreciation for Bucktail.
Yeah, don't share your source. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Have you, this is kind of both of you, have you guys, I know you have actually, but Josh, did you ever like back in the day kill your own deer or get a buddy to drop a pile of dead deer off at your house and like keep the tails and mess with them? I did it once and it was a freaking shit show. Like literally it was like, nope, that was a waste of time. That didn't work. What about you?
Yeah, that has happened to me and it continues to happen to me. And I've gone as far as to going to hide donation stations and sifting through the tails and the hides at night and cutting them off. We're all weird.
What type of breed are we? What are we?
When do you draw the line?
True. I know Gabe,
all that stuff. Yeah.
What did you say, Josh?
When do you draw the line? You know, at what point do you stop going down the rabbit hole? The answer is never.
Until you see the light. I haven't found it.
2-week-old roadkill. That's the line.
Okay, got it. You found it. You've been up to.
I just made that up, but I have thought about pulling over for roadkill at certain points. But previous to musky full, I mean, I don't need to do that anymore.
Correct.
But there were when this time, like when I was looking for the perfect roadkill, that was definitely crossed my mind.
Yeah. Joshua.
Hello.
Okay, and we're back. Minor error there, but we were talking about the. I was gonna say like, I don't look at deer the same, you know, and I hunted for deer a little bit, but it was like, oh, you know, what's the rack size, and oh, that's a big one. I look at every tail.
Totally.
You just like.
I mean, we've joked about it before. We want to get a mount for the shop. That
what the hell is that thing?
Instead of the head of the deer, it's just the ass of the deer.
Of a premium
giant one, like ideally like that guy right there.
Yeah, that's honestly a one of a kind tail. We're going to talk about that and why that's one of a kind, but that is a special one. We've had that for quite some time.
Yes.
So I guess where I was going with that too is like maybe from your perspective, Gabe, you know, and you've done it, Josh, like I think there's some lore in getting your own tail and dyeing it and tying a fly with it, but like it seems like a lot of work, like to do it right.
It is.
I mean, I know how much time you spend on it.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and to be quite honest, it's like kind of gross too, you know. I mean, there's typically poop on them and blood on them, and they're half a little bit rotten. At least when I've gotten them, like sourced them from,
your taxidermist,
the weird places like that. Yeah, it's a ton of work. You gotta degrease them and do all that stuff. So I think the reason to do it is similar to like why you want to tie your own fly and catch a fish on the fly that you tied. Like, yeah, if you harvest the tail, dye and process the tail, turn it into a fly, catch the muskie, that's gonna feel really cool.
Especially if you harvested the deer too. Like, it's one thing to get your buddy to drop off a bag of dead parts, but if you're like, dude, I killed the deer, I'm using the heart, I'm using the...
That's like full circle.
Yeah, full circle.
There, and I think that's really cool, and that's what got me into it.
Yeah.
Would I still be doing that now that I have access to a good tail? Like, even if I didn't work here and I could get good bucktail? Probably not.
Yeah.
But
which kind of now it comes off as me like pining for like, don't do it on your own, buy it from us, which I like, not the case at all.
No,
it's
like,
just
like play with it. It's fun.
Play with it.
It's
do it.
Kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it stinks.
Try and dye black. Good luck.
Yeah. Good luck with black. Wear a face mask. It smells.
Yeah, it does. Which, oh boy, speaking of, we're going to get into our journey, but I'm glad we have an announcement to make later. And I just like had a goosebump moment of like it wasn't about putting Gabe through this. It was about his poor wife, Lydia, having to deal with this because he did do this in his basement for over a year, for a long time. Yeah. The first Musky full Bucktail Lab.
Yep.
So kind of speaking of that, let's briefly talk about, I think it's kind of a fun, we might be the only three people that think so, but a little fun journey of like how we got going on this, some of the things we learned. And I think you have a quote that I'd love you to share to get us started, because we're going to remain a little secretive. Yeah. And maybe it's not to...
Yeah, I mean,
but there's reasons to it. There's a little lore here.
For me, it's like, I didn't have a handbook. I didn't have anyone to really like teach me this stuff. So a lot of it was like my, sweat and tears kind of trying to figure this out and making mistakes and wasting money and doing some of that stuff. So in my days of research, trying to figure out how the heck to do all this, I found a quote. It's actually from an excerpt from Principles and Practice of Fur Dressing and Fur Dyeing. It's from 1922. You can find that article. There's really nothing special. They're using all sorts of weird dyes for ladies' garments. But
sending you down a rabbit hole that doesn't matter, everybody.
Anyways, here's the quote, and I think it's a good thing to start with. There were some who continued to practice the forbidden art in secret, using secluded and out-of-the-way places for their workshops, and mixing their carefully guarded recipes with as much mystery as the witches did their magic potions. These circumstances probably account for the great amount of mystery which has been, and still is to a considerable degree, attached to fur dyeing, and also explains the opprobrium and distrust with which fur dyers were formerly regarded.
Formally, there's so many things in that.
Yeah, from 1922.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we first got into it. I'm just gonna kind of go all over the place, but I was just this like, in hindsight, and I don't like, just this like naive younger city business be like, hi, I'm here to buy your bucktail, and they just like would growl at me. They're like, you're not, and
that's
I did.
This works.
Yeah, like, this is fur trading, boy. Who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Pretty much. I heard there's a boy from Madison trying to buy a bucktail. Like, I think I got one of those.
Yeah. Who's this cowboy?
Trying to buy a bucktail?
608 number.
Yeah. Oh man. So that's like, first of all. Second of all, you're a witch apparently.
It's
kind of vibe. Yeah. There's a vibe there. But yeah, just so many things. The secrecy, I think, and that was like the case. It was like secrecy of like where it comes from and what you do with it. And you just kind of like felt like, why does nobody have this written down anywhere?
Yeah, totally. Why isn't there a website where I can just log on and buy bucktail?
Yeah.
Like raw white bucktails.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Well, and just the art of dyeing in general, fibers and clothes.
The whole thing is kind of left a mystery.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have to do a little bit of that ourselves today. I mean, there's like, I can't share recipes. I can't tell you all this stuff that I've learned because, I've worked really hard for it.
Yeah.
But
and it is easy to not easy to replicate, but like it's not, it's not like we can find the one supply. Like this is anybody can get this.
Yep.
It's kind of the beautiful thing about it. Anybody can go get it. They can find some green dye.
Yep.
It's not, get some Kool-Aid and mix it up and you got yourself a tail. But I think what we hopefully get to talk about today is, the first principle of how we started as musky fly anglers and tires and got obsessed with bucktail and how we brought that into the business to give it as much life. You especially, but we've all had our, I mean, from some of the incredible, I remember the first ad that Bam Bam did for us with the big pink bucktail on it.
Awesome.
Like it's will always be core.
Yes.
Yeah, Gabe said when we get to a certain number of revenue, he's going to get a big bucktail tattoo, and maybe we'll have to join him,
I'm
Josh.
like already ready.
You ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm in. Wisco flame on your ass cheek. My mom would be so proud. So long story short, though, we love bucktail, as we talked about. It's a kind of a requirement for musky fly fishing. We wanted to bring that love and kind of necessity and the big problem that was out in the bucktail world into what we did. So at Musky, when we started, that was like the big thing. Like, well, we can't just have fly tying materials. We got to have fly tying materials and awesome bucktail. And if you've been musky fly fishing long enough, love them or hate them, you've had Brad Bowen was the bucktail man.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's a lot of, I think, for our generation and the generation younger than us, when you go on the internet, which is how we go about learning things today, when you open up some of the books, it was Brad Bowen talking about bucktail and musky flies and referencing Bob Popovic is who he learned from.
Yep.
And he was the dude, primo tail.
Especially here in the upper Midwest.
Especially here in the upper Midwest.
There's some East Coast guys doing it too. But yeah, that's where we get musky fool started.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's where we hit him up because we knew that he sold tail. It was kind of here and there, and it was like, you had to know the guy to get you to know Brad to get the tail, or you had to just time it right, and it was kind of hard to get your hands on, but when you got it, it was great. So we reached out to him, and we're like, long story short, let's work together, and that was what we did right away. I think a lot of folks that have been supporting us for a while probably remember that. And it was like, I think when my eyes first started to get opened, it wasn't like ordering fly line anymore, where you just fill out a spreadsheet and it comes in a packing list and you get a nice box. I mean, it's like, again, dead animal parts that at that time, Brad was touching every single one of them. So a lot of care goes into it. So very grateful to have worked with them, learned from them. We're not doing that anymore because for many reasons, we, our lives went separate ways. And he kind of showed us a few things. Gabe had done so much of his own knowledge. We fused that together. And that's when you and I started to kind of ramp things up over here. And it was like, well, this isn't really working that great anymore. It was kind of tapering off. A lot of things were going on to contribute to that. No harm, no foul.
Yeah. So it was tough.
So we have to keep doing bucktail. We got to bring this in house. And that's when you kind of entered the picture.
Yeah.
On that end, because you were like already kind of messing around with it.
I had already died of 1,000 of them or whatever at my house and had some experience and
a passion for it. You're like, I want to do this.
Yeah. So that's where I came in.
Yeah. And then that was what? So that was like, when did you start putting the first Musky Full Bucktail Lab together? Like 2022 spring?
Yeah, I mean, it would have been last
year and a half ago.
This last spring, but the spring before.
2022 spring in your basement in Eau Claire. And it just was like, again, no tutorial. It was like, how should we dry it?
Yeah.
How should we do this? How should we do this? How should we dye? All the steps, trial and error. A lot of mistakes, not on you. I remember just like the one, like getting it was the first hard part.
Yeah.
And there were a couple, like even just getting your hands on the right stuff, the raw materials was just like, hey, I remember like, Gabe, I got a ton. I think I even called Bam Bam. I was like, I'm going to go get a bunch. And he's like, who are you picking it up from? Do you need a buddy? Are you bringing a gun? You remember that one, Josh?
Yeah.
And I was like, I wasn't planning on it, but maybe I should be, you know? And it turned out to not be that great. They're fucking nasty.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, there were some issues with
Yeah.
them.
And I apologize for folks. I think, unfortunately, got a few of those into the production process. And very quickly, thanks to you and Nick, we're like, we need to stop this.
Yeah, this isn't.
We have thousands more of these, and you need no more. We
Yeah.
need dump and run, which is costly. Kind of the first like costly mistake, but worth it because the quality had to stay. Like we didn't just need to be another crappy bucktail producer.
Correct.
And you were experiencing issues in your production process. So that was like big learning, and I think really forced us to be like, we need to have this needs to be full cycle. Like we basically need to get this as soon as it's cut off the deer, and we need to have it from multiple sources, all over the upper Midwest. So we kind of hunted and pecked and found several, and
correct.
It's crazy. I mean, I think that's like bringing it back to the quote, the why I laughed like when it said formally the fur trading business. I'm like, there is nothing different about that today. Like when we go to these places, it's Josh calls us after we're done. He's like, you guys okay? You alive? Yes, we're coming home, Josh. Thanks, Dad. And it's just gnarly and nasty and crazy. I love yeah. And it's like we sort them, every single one of them. So that was another moment to just appreciate Lydia, because she put up with your wife, because she put up with all the nasty crappy tails being delivered to your house, the good ones. There was probably bucktail in every fucking room of your
totally. I mean, well, we like, because we used to live in Eau Claire, and we just moved down here close from Madison to be more available for musky fool. And I mean, we were finding bucktail in the new house we moved into from stuff that we brought in as we were moving in on the first day. Lydia's like, there's freaking bucktail on the carpet in our master bedroom already.
It's just like how brown trout got here in America. It came over on the boats.
Yeah. So, yeah, whoever is now renting the house we moved out of will probably have bucktail
forever.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, what is this
landlord?
Stuff? Yeah, like, what is this stuff? Because it's mysterious when it's on its own. It's like, who's got all this white hair? Who's the old man shedding?
Yeah.
Hilarious. But yeah, long story short, I think it was just like another reason we wanted to bring it in house. And that's when we really started to update things, packaging. I remember Josh kind of took that one on, found the bags, which are sweet. We got to a point, thanks to Josh, where the bags were at least 50% recyclable.
Yeah.
Instead of just
Not
more
just
poly,
plastic.
which kills us all slightly, but so we're 50% better than most. I think we went through a lot of iterations on the grading system, and like, is this the one? Is this the one? Or do we want it? We changed it many times. Colors. It was kind of this 2022 is like a lot of learning. I think we thought we were gonna get it up and running.
And I mean, you mentioned grading. You can cut me off. We're gonna touch base on this later, but I think that's the one thing that we do differently than all the other bucktail sources, and that was specifically from the pain point us musky guys found. It was like, I can order a bucktail online, but I have no idea if it's going to be an inch and a half long, or you never know what you're going to get. And I think that's where our grading system came in. I mean, we're not the first to grade, but we're probably the first to grade tails and sell them at this quantity. I don't know for sure, but
and the way we do, I think, like we took some stuff that certain, like Bowen was doing, we took some stuff that others had done. We're like, well, how can we make this work? It's like not right
based on length. I know some people do it on weight and even just general like size of the tail, but not length of the fibers. And for us musky guys and striper guys, we're looking for the length. I mean, that's what we want for specific flies. I want certain kinds of bucktail, certain lengths of bucktail.
And we do, again, not going to give away any deep dark secrets, but we literally grade every single one of them. There's no other way than to hold it up, grade it, look at it. I think the one secret that is genuine, and we've talked about this and we always would come back to it, was like, what's the rule of thumb? would you be stoked if you got this tail?
Yes.
Would you be as a there's me, you, Nick, anybody that was like you tie flies, you love bucktail.
Totally.
Would you be pumped?
Yep.
There's
If
any
it's like
shroud of
borderline.
doubt.
Yeah. If you're like, I don't know, just that you ask yourself. And I think, like if you currently buy our bucktails, you may notice when you buy a pack of grade A bucktails, sometimes there's 2 bucktails in that. And that just means that one of us, when we were grading it, said,
Merry Christmas.
I might not be stoked if I got just that one tail. What if I got these 2? Would I be stoked?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'd be stoked. So that's why you might find 2 bucktails in a package, just because that.
Well, and it's just tough, even though we have a really hard standard. Like sometimes it's long up here, sometimes it's long down here, sometimes it's a little wispy. They're not the same. We look at lots of them, and they're just all different. And sometimes you get like a little shorty. Look at these 2 compared to each other. And honestly, like I want this fiber on this little one right here. You better give me that one. That one's sweet.
Yep.
And that's like
I would want to tie with.
That's how it goes a little bit. So that kind of is like that topic a little bit. Business of bucktail, fur trading's crazy. Bloody, poopy. I covered all the bases there. I guess on that, there's some interesting background that like we got this question, we get this question. It's a fair question. It'll always be a question, but like talk about why it's so hard to find AA and AAA, and like put it in perspective a little bit for folks of like, no, seriously, we're trying, we try.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is that these are wild animals. They're not farmed. We're not genetically modifying them. Like, like look at Whiting Farms, for example. They're literally genetically modifying chickens to have the perfect the properties for fly tying material. We don't have deer farms that can do that yet. Nor would I really want them. I mean, they're but yeah, I mean they're wild animals. Their coats vary based on weather conditions, based on the season that they were harvested, based on geographical location, and it's
how they're harvested. Like, dude, how they were treated.
Totally. Yeah. Like you can have an amazing tail that was treated like shit throughout, until we get it. And now it's not an amazing tail anymore.
Was part of the reason that one time we screwed up was like that gentleman just treated him differently.
Yeah, it was differently.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing. Like there is a finite number of good bucktail in the world, and we are doing everything we can to try and track it down.
I just start telling people that now when they're like asking. I'm like, I know literally in the last 24 months we've fondled a stupid amount. Here's what it shakes out to.
Yep.
For every couple thousand.
Yep.
We're lucky if we get one of these AAA Magnum.
Yeah. Yes. For every
like
1 or 2,000.
Like,
we're lucky.
And then it's like, well, what do you do? Dye this? It's like probably not, because you're just gonna. So talk to that a little bit, like the process, not without, but like
of dying.
Yeah, and I think it kind of, I'm jumping all over the place because I'm like a little nerdy kid about this.
There's a lot to talk
about. But we get asked about like why is black so hard, and I think why are AAAs and AAs so hard, and there's like similarities there because one thing that's not a secret when we dye this stuff is
I mean when we dye
it doesn't grow.
It actually shrinks. The heat that I use in the dyeing process will shrink the fibers. Black especially requires a high heat. That's not a secret. You can Google how to dye black bucktail. That's the first thing that you'll probably find. So yeah, that
true black, real, no purple, no green, no blue hues.
Like no 99% black. Like true black is a difficult color to get. And it's even more difficult to get without frying the hair. So it's really easy to use too much temperature, too many chemicals, and that kind of it removes it almost feels like it's dead hair. Like when you go to tie it in, it doesn't want to flare.
Yep.
It feels kind of crispy. If you've ever bought a black bucktail, I'm sure you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, a lot of colors actually have that to some extent. It's like the really deep colors, like purple can be hard sometimes.
It's still bullshit though, because you just want black for musky flies.
I know black is.
Believe me, folks, we want it.
I know. And yeah, even I'll be completely honest. I have spent a lot of time figuring out this bucktail thing. I don't consider myself a true expert yet. Sometimes I nail black. Sometimes it's 99% black, and that's
why we're honest about it. That's why
we're honest about it. Yeah,
we're not going to purport. Oh, this is black. No, we like shine UV lights on it. We're like, nope, I can see green.
Yep. We take it seriously. So.
Yep. You're not eating this week, Gabe. What other things we got asked about? Like, where the deer come from? Does that relate to the size tail? Usually, yes, kind of. Like, it's not the species of deer, I guess I would say. I don't know what you would say, Gabe. More like upper Midwest, the cold, wintry.
Yeah, like deer, whitetails from Oklahoma and Kansas and all that stuff down south. I mean, I've seen some of those tails, and they're thin and wispy and short.
Yeah, the deer can still get big, but their fur isn't required to get big and thick and long.
Yep. So yeah, the best tails typically come from the upper Midwest.
Yep.
Where it gets cold.
Warm winters and cold winters impact this.
Yep.
We've seen
weather systems.
There's also folks like, this will sound crazy, but we are not the only people buying, like fishermen, anglers are not the only ones buying deer tails. And it will blow your mind. The other industries buying them. Then you're like, that's deer. And they, guess what they want? The longest stuff ever. And I'll tell you right now, they have bigger pockets than any of us anglers. So it gets it tough. It makes it like kind of frustratingly tough. And I know we're not going to offend anyone on this podcast talking about it, because we probably don't reach the audience that is the hairdressers that use hackle. I know some of them buy hackle from us and Schwappen.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this like,
I get a little frustrated with it.
Yeah, you're just like, it's a little bit of a catch-22 where you're like, get your own shit.
When I'm writing thank you notes, I always hit them with the thing. Good luck fishing.
Yeah, good luck fishing. And that's how we feel about, like, we're like hoarding it for anglers. I promise you.
Yes.
Like, we're trying our best.
Yeah.
By no means is all the AA going to these other places.
Not if we can help it.
If we can help it.
It is, but it's not from us.
Well, and it's part of the reason we saw the prices go up. Like, I think that was like an economic shift that people who were buying bucktail noticed in the last 3 or 4 years. Was you used to be able to buy a hairline tail for like $7.99 at the fly shop. And like, yeah, you had to sort through it, and 5 of them were garbage, 5 of them were okay. Cheaper. Even when we started buying tails and working with
in the last 3 years,
and it like something changed, and we eventually figured out, like, one, it wasn't like supply and quality was going up because you can't manufacture better, longer deer, and 2, you had some big buyers come into the space who were like paying a lot, buying it up, and they didn't want the A grade, they wanted the longest stuff, and
they wanted AA's and AAA's.
Like I said, they did. Their pocketbook was open.
Yep.
And that kind of, it's still difficult, but I think in the land grab that is bucktail, we're trying to fly the flag for anglers and get as much as we can. So kind of the business of bucktail, a little fun. I find that stuff interesting. And it just, hopefully, that's what we're talking about when we say we care a lot about this and we take it obsessively serious. Let's get into, I think, to round out, like, talk a little bit about tying with bucktail and tips we have, unless like there's anything on those other 2 topics I missed, but I feel like,
I can touch on a few things. I think there are people that are even more qualified than myself. I mean, this guy right here, Bob Popovics, if you don't know this
Great book.
I considered it sort of the kind of the Bible of bucktail.
Tying with bucktail.
Bucktail. Yes. At least to start. Especially for saltwater striper guys, and guys who want to tie beautiful hollow beast flies. He's kind of the king in my mind. And then even guys like Gunner and they are extra nerdy about fly tying. Listen to those guys; they know what they're talking about. But I think we come at it from maybe a different perspective, and specifically the musky game, as musky guys. Like
angling too. Like, there's just like literally how these things fish and perform.
How they fish and perform, and I think that's one. That's
just what they look like.
Not just what they look like. Like this tail, that is a AAA, maybe even a quadruple A. Those are like 9-inch long fibers. I have no real use for a tail like this.
It's literally sat in the shop because
Yeah,
we're just
it's on display. Like if I were tying beast flies, like mega beast flies, 100%. Personally, I don't fish a lot of beast flies. They're not the first thing that I choose. I know they're sparse, they're beautiful, they're freaking works of art.
But in the musky game, it's back to like, looks like a bait fish, therefore muskies should eat it.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
no, I want my flies to like do things. I want them to kick and glide and push water and be erratic. Those beast flies are beautiful, but they swim straight. I mean, they
swim flies. Yeah.
And I hope that I'm not coming across as aggressive there, because I have so much respect for beast flies and the people that can tie them beautifully. I went.
Well, yeah, but it's just like it's not like you fish a bunch of salmon flies either. Like it's like fly tying is an art. Fly tying is there's the middle ground, and then there's the guide flies.
Totally, and I think I come at it from a little bit more of the angling fishing perspective rather than the fly tying work of art perspective.
We still like fawn over this stuff though. Like that's what I don't like. But to your point, I'm similar. I don't know about you, Bam Bam, but like I have a bin downstairs. It's an impressive bin in my fly tying room. It's getting dangerous because it's pretty much just like AA and AAA leftovers.
Totally.
And I like go through to tie, and I don't have enough of this stuff. I got to obviously just go to the shop and get some, but like literally it's cool. But I think in our experience, you just end up, it's kind of it gets weirder. Like the bucktail hair changes when it gets to, 9 inches and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think it's just to like kind of start from the basics again. Whenever you're buying a bucktail, if you can look at it, great. There are all sorts of different properties. I mean, this tail right here. So sorry if you're listening, I'm holding this up to the camera. This tail has hollow butts all the way up to the tip of the tail. So that means if you grab this stuff up here, it's still going to flare like crazy. That's one kind of tail. If you grab this guy, this is a AA, sort of a AA for my personal batch of me goofing around with colors. But this is really not hollow very much at all towards even the bottom, towards the middle.
Oh, it's wispy.
It's sort of wispy. Still a beautiful tail. It's got its own home somewhere. Every bucktail has a home. There's a fly you can tie with just about any bucktail you buy, but it's important to know what you need for the specific fly that you're tying. And
you want that water push Bufords, glide flies. There's a lot of different flies. Then great, like underwing. This stuff is kind of good for that.
Totally.
That lightweight.
Sparse bucktail.
Like you were talking about it earlier, Josh. When you're tying like a synthetic fly with bucktail underneath, tell us what bucktail you're looking for, because it's probably different than the bucktail you're looking for when you're tying the head of a Buford.
Yeah, with most big predator fly patterns, I think this is pretty common, but you use a lot of the wispy stuff towards the rear end of the fly. And as you go towards the head, you get to more of that bulky, hollow stuff like Gabe was talking about. And even when you watch Bob Popovic tie those big, beautiful, hollow beast flies, he might have like 3 or 4 AAAs of all white sitting there, because he specifically knows the different nuances within each tail and where exactly he's going to put those fibers on which segment of that beast fly.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, especially the tailing stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, even for musky flies, I do that. I'll start with the less hollow stuff towards the back.
Yeah, or like a topwater fly. I just wanted to have some perceived bulk. You're not
don't really care how it's going to swim because the popper head's doing all the work. Yeah.
So that's where Gunnar comes into, and he's done a good job. Like even on these posters, he talks about that. It's not every tail's like this.
It's a general rule,
but it's a good general rule of thumb, and I think it's also a good encouragement to folks tying with it. Bob, he talks about it in those. There's a couple other guys that talk about it too, but like you kind of feel it. Put it in your hands. See what it spins like around the hook. See what it does when it takes on water.
Totally.
Even like these 2 tails. If I go like this, that hair is pretty stiff.
Yep.
You probably can't really see it, but like it's got some wiggle to it. Looks like angel hair a little bit.
Yeah. I think one of the big tips that I learned early on from Bob Popovic is a long fiber cut short is not the same as a short fiber. if that makes sense. So if I were to take this, say I was tying little smallmouth bugs or something with bucktail, and I took
Like Clouser bugs.
Clousers, sure. If
I
I
wonder
took,
where we came up with that name.
like it'd be a mortal sin. But if I were to take this 9-inch, AAA and just cut the tips off to use, bucktail is hollow towards the base, and as you get towards the tip, you start to lose that hollowness. And so if I cut a really long fiber short, I'm getting up into that stuff that's not hollow at all. It's going to have a completely different property. So
It won't spin.
So even buying double A's and cutting the bottom inch off to get it kind of closer to grade A, say you're tying a Buford and you need some shorter stuff for the butt, it's not going to do the same thing. You want that hollowness in there to help with action and help with flaring and all that stuff.
And when you're tapering out a fly from a 5-inch fly to a 25-inch fly, like you need different proportions, which is really answers the question as to why we so obsessively grade them. Why do we have Clouser grade? It's not to get rid of the shitty small tails. We don't think of them like that.
No.
It's you need a prerequisite of all of them,
100%.
Especially to get the right properties out of them.
Yep. If you're really using it effectively.
Yeah. And that also kind of bleeds us into like the other parts of the deer, which is like when you're talking, you brought up Bufords or, even like deer hair flies. Like that's not usually what we're using a lot of bucktail for, the heads at least. There's some bucktail on here that would spin really nicely, but generally you get even more hollow when you get to like the belly.
To the belly and then to the B side of the tail. Like we call them B sides.
Yep.
I don't know if that's a normal term, but
this stuff in the back. Yep.
Like flip the tail over, and just look at
really
it's
hollow,
typically brown. That stuff is really hollow.
And this is basically belly hair. It's kind of the ass clump, but it's close.
It's like a mixture of body and belly.
Yeah. And that's what you're spinning deer hair bugs with. And Bufords it's nice. You got to get long stuff. But that's just some differences, I guess.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and like personally, my most tied with deer tail is 8.
And we say that to folks, and it seems almost like slimy, but like that's why we find we spend so much time getting good quality A's. And yeah, of course, we see double A or triple A. I'm gonna shove the guy over next to me to get my hands on it so we can bring it into Musky Fold. But A's is where the money is. That's not
this
not the money for us, but like that's what I want
for the flies. Yeah,
that's what I need in my flies.
Yeah, and I think we're like a little bit weird in that. I don't want to I think there's most fly tires out there would probably be like, wow, you guys that's weird. I've never thought about that.
In their defense, I feel like there's been some like I don't know. You two chime in if there's something I'm off here, but my perspective is like it's just been like a little bit of like telephone where the message got misdelivered that like you needed long hair.
Yeah,
like you do. I'm not going to tie that fly with 1-inch Clouser grade crappy deer or bucktail.
No, but
like there's a ceiling.
Yes,
where like once I get to 3.5 inches, it's usually pretty good. What I'm sorting through on my tails is like the ones that have the right quality hair,
the right hollowness, buoyancy, all that stuff. Yeah.
It also speaks a little bit to how are you thinking about the fly in terms of design, in terms of how it swims versus how it looks to your eye.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or how it casts.
Yeah.
Is it nice and easy to cast?
Long fiber looks pretty, but the fish don't swim as pretty.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is like probably a 16 to 18 inch fly. This is tied entirely with A grade bucktail, B side for the head,
and it's like heavily stacked and reverse tied. So
yeah,
if you wanted more bulk and profile out of that thing, you could. You know what I mean? Like when you tie your ear fly, you got so much. We'll have to talk about this later, but you got so much in there, cutting the length off. Like the A's are even longer than this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, this is like one of my best swimming flies. I caught a muskie on it yesterday.
Yep. Or even like Mark Burns ties some awesome bucktail flies. Who else we got in the shop that ties awesome? I mean, we had a lot of guys, but like, look at them all. Josh, same with like even the fly. Like what, if you really need something incredibly long, I kind of point to what Josh said earlier. Look at synthetics then, because you're going for different properties.
Yep.
You're not going for weightless and kind of stiffer.
Yep. Agreed.
So AAA. Well, and then Clouser grade, we do have, because I think we even got to the point where customers and ourselves were like, I don't want to use my A tail for
a little mini tiny
Murdich or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and I think Clouser is 3.5 inches or less.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, why don't you just? It's on the website, but like
it's totally on the website. I mean, Clouser's anything up to 3.5. A is 3.5 to 4.5. Double A is 4.5 to what do I'd spend a minute 4.5 to 5.
It's been a minute since we saw AAA.
Yeah.
So we're like, I don't even remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge.
Yeah. I mean, AAA, I think is like 6 inches or longer.
Yeah. You know them when you see them.
You know them when you see them. I think we've had 25 of them through the shop in the last 2 years. So, congrats if you got one. Yeah. So
somebody out there is making a dick joke about this whole conversation right now. No, we're talking about deer hair still, Dan.
Bigger is not always better.
Yeah, no, bigger is not always better. Oh, man, we covered a lot of good stuff here. I think, wanted to keep this about bucktail, but like different perspective on it. We'll get into tying. I think we got a lot of cool stuff planned for tying videos to share with you guys. We're working on all that stuff. This was really just like kind of the behind the scenes of bucktail a little bit, which kind of brings me to the close and one of the updates we talked about, because I think we talked about how we went from doing it in your basement. And while it's also exciting that when this episode is coming out is because literally next week, so like a week from when we're recording this, we get to finally, we've been looking for a long time, kind of one of the final pieces of the puzzle, move into a dedicated bucktail facility. We found one.
Pretty excited about it.
They have no idea what we're using it for yet.
They might have.
They do. They do. But he doesn't yet really understand the mess. But I mean, I think we're really excited just to be able to do this better. There's for sure a limit on the amount of tails we can do, not because of our production, but because at some point you buy crap. Yep. Well, and you can't. Yep. You can get 500,000 tails. Sure, that's easy, but so many are going to be crap.
Yes.
But the space was limiting. Gabe's new house was written in the formal documents was no bucktail dyeing allowed.
Yeah, my wife. And honestly, I didn't really want to do it in there either.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Nice
the nice new house that I bought.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have that. We would tell you where it is, but I'm gonna go back to Gabe's quote where you got to keep that secret location.
Magic witch potion.
Yeah, magic witch potion. No, we are excited though, and we hope that this kind of gets us back on track with bucktail. I think we get a lot of questions. We're always getting asked, when is more coming? We're about to run into fall season, and fall season gets very quickly into tying season, and bucktail will be back in full.
Yep. So
and hopefully better than ever.
We've got a few colors out of stock right now and some of that stuff, and it's all going to be coming back.
All coming back. I'm just going to flip back then to questions. But yeah, we're excited. I'm very excited. It's going to help us organize ourselves a little bit more. It's actually going to help us do some other cool things that we'll share later, like outside of the bucktail space. Secrets, more secrets. Yep. But it's going to be cool, and we'll share. We'll give some Easter eggs about some of that too, because I think if you haven't seen bucktail in this bulk, it's crazy to see how it happens. And every time I drop it off or come over to your house and see, even just, I never saw the lab though.
Yeah, Josh saw.
That's
Josh
a shame,
got to
actually.
see the lab, but Dano never did.
Yeah, you did a photo shoot over there.
Yeah,
it was magical.
Realize that.
Yeah,
what a dick.
We called it the Bucktail Bunker.
Bucktail Bunker.
Yep, it was the bunker.
Which is a funny story, because on our purchase order system, I'm sorry if I just put everybody to sleep with that. We're going to talk about accounting now. We have some things that we would get delivered to the Bucktail Bunker, and we called it that. And we had vendors reach out to us and be like,
what is the bunker?
What is this? And why are we sending Flyline to the Bucktail Bunker? We're like, oh, sorry, wrong address.
Sorry, forgot to switch that tab.
And you got to wonder what they were thinking. It's like, what in the hell? Musky fools lost their mind.
Wisconsin, I'm telling you.
Yeah. What were your impressions when you first went over there, Josh, to the bunker?
Oh, it was magical. I'm one of those weirdos that I just love the nitty gritty. That place had a lot of soul.
Yep.
Unmistakable smell, I'm sure.
Yep.
It wasn't even, the smell wasn't. It was just, it was.
Imagine like a freshman dorm room that hasn't been cleaned all year. I was just kidding.
Less pizza boxes and beer cans. It's just
It has a good smell though. Like I think that's the right stuff.
To be quite honest, I don't even smell it anymore.
Yeah. You know it had a terrible smell though? That crap that we got stuck with for a little bit.
That was rancid.
That's how you knew.
Yeah.
Like this stuff's bad.
It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Like, it's I smell and I was just around it for a little bit.
Yeah. Too much fat left on it. That went rancid.
Everything. Yeah.
Yep. So.
Well, this has been good. I think we answered all the questions that everybody sent us. We appreciate that. I'm just running through them all right now. This is fun. I'm glad we were able to do this. We had talked about it for a while, and then it was just perfect that it's going to line up with kind of the renaissance of Bucktail at Musky Full as we try to get back on the horse in full.
Yep.
So anyway, everybody that joined, we appreciate you tuning in. This was a fun one. We take our bucktail seriously. We really, really, really do work hard to get the best tails around and share them with everybody. We're excited to kind of share some of the details on next steps with bucktail. And honestly, like, we're not doing all of this because for no reason. You guys and gals have shown awesome support, and like the phone calls and the questions, and even if you get one that you don't like, we don't want that. Call us, let us know. Yep. We'll make it right. We want to talk bucktail tips, tricks.
Leave notes and check out if you're ordering bucktail online. If you're looking for a very specific fiber, we will do our best to accommodate.
Hell yeah. We
understand it.
We understand it and love it. And we want the good stuff for you too. So that's all I got. As always, thanks for tuning in to the Spot Burn Podcast, episode 10. That's a wrap. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Gabe, thank you, fella.
Anytime.
Thanks,
we'll do
Gabe.
It again. Bam, bam, over and out. See you, fella.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Spot Burn Podcast. Coming to you from the dungeon, this podcast is presented by Musky Fool Fly Fishing Co. We want to thank our awesome sponsors, Cortland Line Company and Stealth Craft Boats. We also want to thank all of you, our listeners, for tuning in, subscribing, sharing, and spreading the good word. If you haven't heard, go check us out at muskyfool.com. Have fun out there on the water, y'all.